The morning sun filtered through the dusty blinds of a small coffee shop in downtown Chicago. Deputy Chief Naomi Carter had decided to start her day quietly, away from the noise of the precinct. Dressed in casual jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap, she looked like any other customer grabbing their morning caffeine fix. She ordered her usual, black coffee, no sugar, and waited at the counter. That's when the door banged open and two uniformed officers strode in. Their eyes swept the room, landing on her. "Hey, you!" one of them barked. "You can't loiter here. This place isn't for people like you." Naomi raised an eyebrow but stayed silent, curious to see where this was going. The younger officer, a tall man with a crew cut, stepped closer. "We've had reports of suspicious individuals around. Mind telling us why you're hanging around here?" The barista froze mid-pour. A couple of customers glanced over but quickly looked away. Naomi took a slow sip from her coffee, her calmness only fueling the officer's irritation. "Ma'am, we're talking to you," the older officer snapped, his hand resting on his duty belt. "Show us some ID." Naomi's fingers twitched toward her wallet, but she stopped. A part of her wanted to reveal herself immediately, to put these officers in their place. Another part, the strategic side that had helped her rise through the ranks, told her to wait. Because sometimes the most powerful lesson came not from anger, but from letting arrogance speak for itself. She looked the younger officer in the eye and asked softly, "And if I don't?" Both men stiffened. They had no idea that in less than an hour they'd be reporting directly to her. The younger officer's jaw tightened. "If you don't, we'll have to take you down to the station for questioning," he said, his tone dripping with authority he thought he had over her. Naomi stayed seated, taking another slow sip of coffee. "Questioning for drinking coffee?" Her voice was calm, almost amused. The older officer stepped in, clearly irritated. "Don't get smart with us, lady. We know your type. Hanging around, watching people, maybe casing the place. We're not stupid." Naomi glanced toward the barista, who was now frozen, unsure whether to step in or stay out of it. A couple at the corner table was filming discreetly on their phone. "Officers," Naomi said evenly, "do you have probable cause for this interaction?" The younger one scoffed. "Probable cause? Look at you, hoodie, cap pulled low, trying to hide your face. That's enough for suspicion." Inside, Naomi felt the familiar sting of injustice. She'd spent 20 years fighting this kind of profiling, training officers to see people, not stereotypes, and here she was, living it firsthand from her own team. "Stand up," the older officer ordered. "Hands where I can see them." Naomi rose slowly, towering slightly over them. She made no sudden moves, but her eyes locked on theirs with quiet authority. "Careful," she said softly. "You're walking a very dangerous line." The younger one laughed. "What, you going to threaten the police?" Naomi smiled faintly. "Not threaten. Warn." The door to the coffee shop opened again, and a patrol sergeant stepped in. His gaze fell on Naomi, and the color drained from his face. "Officers," he said quickly, "you need to stand down, right now." The two men exchanged confused glances. They still didn't know, but they were about to. The sergeant moved quickly between Naomi and the two officers, his tone sharp. "What exactly is going on here?" The younger officer answered first. "We were questioning a suspicious individual, Sarge. She's been hanging around and—" "Suspicious?" The sergeant's eyes widened as he glanced back at Naomi. "Do you know who this is?" The officers exchanged puzzled looks. "Some loiterer," the older one said, shrugging. Naomi set her coffee cup down on the counter with deliberate calm. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice low but carrying across the shop, "I've spent 2 decades in law enforcement. I've commanded more operations than I can count, and I've trained officers in this very city on community relations and proper conduct." The younger officer's smirk faltered. "What are you saying?" The sergeant cleared his throat. "She's saying she's your boss." The older officer blinked. "Our what?" Naomi reached into her pocket, pulled out her badge and held it up. The gleam of the metal caught the light. "Deputy Chief Naomi Carter, Chicago Police Department." The silence in the coffee shop was deafening. Even the espresso machine seemed to pause mid-hiss. Naomi let the moment hang, then continued, "I came in here for coffee, not a lecture on my hoodie or skin color. But instead of asking questions respectfully, you assumed the worst. That assumption could have cost you more than your pride." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado crumbling. The older one stared at the floor. Naomi's eyes stayed locked on them. "You wear that uniform to serve and protect, not to judge and harass." The sergeant sighed, knowing this was far from over. "Deputy Chief," he said carefully, "perhaps we should take this conversation to the precinct." Naomi gave a slow nod. "Yes, we should." The air outside the coffee shop was crisp, but the tension between them was heavier than the morning fog. Naomi walked ahead, her stride purposeful, forcing the two embarrassed officers to trail behind her like chastened schoolboys. The sergeant kept pace beside her, his face tight with concern. "Deputy Chief, I had no idea you were in the area," he said quietly. "That's the point, Sergeant," Naomi replied. "A good officer treats everyone with respect, whether they're the deputy chief or a stranger in a hoodie." Pedestrians glanced curiously at the unlikely scene, two uniformed officers shadowing a casually dressed woman who clearly commanded their obedience. When they reached the precinct, Naomi paused at the entrance. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone," she said, looking back at the younger officer, who now avoided her gaze. "But you both need to understand how quickly bias can ruin lives, yours and the person you're targeting." Inside, the precinct buzzed with its usual mix of ringing phones, shuffling paperwork, and voices calling out across desks. The moment Naomi stepped in, the room's energy shifted. Heads turned, conversations halted. A few officers straightened instinctively, realizing her rank. Captain Morales emerged from his office, his eyes widening when he saw Naomi flanked by the sergeant and the two officers. "Deputy Chief Carter, what's going on here?" Naomi's voice was calm but carried weight. "A teaching moment, Captain. One that might save this department from another headline it doesn't want." She gestured for the two officers to follow her into the conference room. The sergeant and Captain Morales exchanged uneasy looks before joining. As the door closed behind them, Naomi placed her badge on the table. "Gentlemen," she said evenly, "let's talk about what happened this morning and why it will never happen again." The conference room felt colder than usual. The blinds were drawn, shutting out the morning light, leaving only the hum of the overhead fluorescent lamps. Naomi sat at the head of the table, her badge still resting in front of her like a silent witness. The two officers shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The younger one, Officer Kent, tapped his boot nervously against the floor. The older one, Officer Daniels, stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Naomi leaned forward. "Let's start simple. Why did you approach me this morning?" Kent cleared his throat. "You matched a suspicious description we'd been given." Her eyes narrowed. "Suspicious description? Or just a person you didn't like the look of?" Daniel shifted in his seat. "You were sitting in the corner, cap pulled down, watching the door. It seemed suspicious?" Naomi interrupted. "That's called situational awareness, something every good officer should have. But here's what you didn't do. You didn't observe before judging. You didn't ask neutral questions. You went straight to assumptions." Kent muttered, "We were just doing our job." Naomi's voice sharpened. "No, you were doing a lazy version of your job, and lazy policing gets people hurt. It erodes public trust. It destroys careers." The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Naomi's gaze softened slightly. "I'm not here to fire you. I'm here to make sure you understand the weight of that badge on your chest. Every decision you make represents this department. Every word you say shapes how the public sees us." She leaned back, letting the silence sink in. "So tell me, how would this have ended if I wasn't your deputy chief?" Neither man had an answer. That silence was all the truth Naomi needed. Naomi let the silence hang for a few moments longer before she spoke again. "If I had been just another citizen, what would have happened?" Daniels swallowed. "We might have taken you in for questioning, and," Naomi pressed. Kent hesitated. "Could have led to an arrest." Naomi's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with conviction. "And with no actual crime committed, that arrest would have been unlawful. Do you understand what that means? It's not just a bad look, it's a violation of civil rights. That's how lawsuits happen. That's how cities lose millions and trust evaporates overnight." The sergeant shifted uncomfortably at the end of the table, but Naomi didn't let up. "You both carry a weapon, a badge, and the authority of the state. That authority is sacred, and the people you serve are not beneath you. They are your equals. If you see them as anything less, you're unfit to wear that uniform." Kent's shoulders slumped. Daniels exhaled slowly, finally meeting her gaze. "We were wrong, Deputy Chief." Naomi nodded slightly, acknowledging it is the first step. "But fixing it? That's harder. It takes humility. It takes unlearning habits you didn't even know you had." She stood, placing her badge back on her belt. "You'll be attending a special training series starting tomorrow. Community engagement, bias awareness and scenario drills, and I expect you to show up ready to learn, not just to check a box." Both men nodded, subdued. Naomi walked to the door but paused, turning back. "Remember this morning, every time you stop someone, Ask yourself, am I protecting or am I profiling? Her words landed heavy. She knew the lesson wouldn't be forgotten. What she didn't know yet, this incident was about to go public. By the time Naomi returned to her office, her phone was buzzing non-stop. Texts, emails, and missed calls piled up like a dam about to break. She finally answered one from her communications officer. "Chief, you need to see this." Within seconds, a video began playing on her screen. It was shaky cell phone footage from the coffee shop. The clip showed Officer Kent confronting her, his voice sharp and dismissive. The angle caught her calm responses, and the moment she revealed her badge. The caption under the video read, "Cops harass woman. She turns out to be Deputy Chief." Naomi sighed, rubbing her temples. How many views? 2 million in 3 hours. Her stomach tightened. She didn't care about the embarrassment for herself. She'd faced worse, but she knew the department's image was already fragile. This would pour gasoline on the fire. She called the captain. "We need a statement before the evening news cycle, and I want the public to know this is being handled internally, with transparency." By noon, major outlets had picked up the story. Reporters were camped outside the precinct, cameras ready. Social media was split, some praising her composure, others condemning the officers. Inside, Naomi gathered her leadership team. "We can't hide from this," she said firmly. "This is an opportunity to show the city we take accountability seriously. We'll address it head-on." Captain Morales nodded reluctantly. "You know this could make them targets for public outrage." Naomi's voice was resolute. "Then we'll protect them from harassment while holding them accountable. This isn't about destroying careers, it's about rebuilding trust." What Naomi didn't realize yet was that the mayor herself had seen the video, and she was on her way to the precinct. The sound of polished heels echoed down the precinct hallway before the receptionist even had time to announce her. Mayor Linda Garvey was not one for subtle entrances. She swept into Naomi's office, trailed by 2 aides carrying clipboards and tablets. "Deputy Chief Carter," the mayor said, her voice brisk but cordial, "I think we need to talk about your—" "Morning." Naomi stood to shake her hand. "Madam Mayor, I assume you've seen the video." The mayor gave a sharp nod. "The whole city has. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Half the calls are outrage at the officers, the other half are praising your restraint." She sat down, crossing her legs. This could either be a PR disaster or a turning point. Naomi leaned forward. "Then let's make it the latter. We use this moment to show that accountability isn't just a word we put in policy manuals, it's action. Public, visible action." The mayor studied her for a moment. "I agree, but I also know the police union is going to fight you on this. They'll call it overreaction. Then they'll have to explain to the public why basic respect is too much to ask," Naomi replied evenly. A faint smile tugged at the mayor's lips. "You don't scare easily, do you?" "Not when I know I'm right." The mayor stood smoothing her blazer. "All right, you have my backing. I'll join you for the press conference. Let's turn this into the example every department in this city should follow." As the mayor left, Naomi exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about 2 careless officers anymore, it was about proving an entire culture could change. And she was ready for the fight. The precinct lobby was packed, cameras, reporters, microphones, and the sharp hum of live broadcasts going out across the city. Naomi stood at the podium, the mayor just to her right, Captain Morales on her left. Flashes popped as the press surged forward. The mayor began. "This morning, an incident involving 2 officers and our deputy chief, Naomi Carter, was captured on video. It has sparked conversation across our city. Today, we're here to address it openly." She gestured toward Naomi. Naomi stepped forward, her posture straight, her voice steady. "What you saw on that video was a failure, not just by 2 officers, but by the system that shaped their assumptions. I wasn't targeted for anything I did. I was targeted for what they thought I was." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Naomi continued. "Those officers will not be fired. Instead, they will undergo intensive retraining. They will learn what it means to serve without prejudice, to protect without bias. And I will personally oversee their progress." A reporter shouted, "Deputy Chief, why not terminate them?" "Because," Naomi said firmly, "you don't fix a broken system by throwing out pieces. You fix it by changing how those pieces work. Accountability is not revenge, it's growth." The mayor nodded approvingly. Naomi's gaze swept the room. "Let this be clear, I will not tolerate discrimination in my department. Whether it's a citizen in a hoodie or the mayor herself, everyone deserves respect, and if that respect isn't given, there will be consequences." The cameras clicked furiously as Naomi stepped back from the podium. The press conference was over, but Naomi could feel it. The real work was just beginning, and the whole city would be watching. 2 days later, the precinct's largest meeting room had been transformed into a training hub. Rows of chairs faced a projection screen, with notepads and pens neatly placed on each seat. A whiteboard at the front bore the words, "Bias Awareness and Community Trust." Naomi stood at the podium, scanning the faces of the officers gathered. Some looked curious, others skeptical, and a few, like Kent and Daniels, looked downright uncomfortable. "This isn't a punishment," Naomi began, her voice carrying across the room. "It's an opportunity. Every one of us has blind spots. The question is, are we willing to confront them?" The first exercise was simple but powerful. Officers were shown a series of photographs, people of all races, ages, and clothing styles, and asked to write down their first impressions. No discussion, no overthinking. When the lists were read aloud anonymously, the results were eye-opening. Words like suspicious, dangerous, and likely criminal were disproportionately applied to certain groups. Naomi didn't shame anyone. Instead, she explained how subconscious bias works, how years of societal conditioning can seep into split-second decisions on the job. Next came role-play scenarios. Officers took turns acting as both police and civilians in tense but non-violent encounters. Daniels, playing the role of a citizen, was visibly shaken when Kent, acting as the officer, spoke to him harshly, mirroring their coffee shop encounter. "This," Naomi said, pausing the exercise, "is how it feels when authority is misused. If you've never been on the receiving end, you can't truly understand the damage it causes." By the end of the session, the room was quieter, more thoughtful. Naomi knew it was only the first step, but she saw something change in Kent and Daniel's eyes. They were starting to get it. A week later, Naomi decided it was time to take the lesson beyond the precinct walls. She arranged for Kent and Daniels to join her at a community center in one of the city's most diverse neighborhoods. When they arrived, the officers looked uneasy. Children played basketball in the courtyard, parents chatted on benches, and elders sipped tea under the shade of a large oak tree. Naomi addressed the crowd first. "We're here to rebuild trust, one conversation at a time. These two officers," she gestured to Kent and Daniels, "have agreed to meet you face to face, to hear your concerns, and to answer your questions honestly." At first, the questions were cautious. A middle-aged man asked about racial profiling. A teenage girl asked why police always seem to assume the worst. Kent and Daniels listened, really listened, and responded without defensiveness. An elderly woman spoke up next. "I've lived here 50 years. I've seen good officers and bad, but I've never seen ones admit they were wrong. Until now." Daniels cleared his throat. "We were wrong. That's the truth, and we're here to do better." The moment broke some of the tension. Kids started asking about police gear, and officers let them try on vests and sit in a patrol car. Laughter replaced suspicion, if only for the afternoon. As the sun dipped low, Naomi stood back, watching Kent crouch to tie a little boy's shoelace and Daniels help carry chairs inside. She knew trust wasn't rebuilt in a day, but this was how it started, and the community was watching. So was the rest of the city. By the next morning, photos from the community center were all over social media. One image in particular went viral. Officer Kent kneeling to help a young boy tie his shoelace, with the caption, "Change starts small." Local news anchors discussed it during their morning segments, contrasting the image with the viral coffee shop video from just a week earlier. The shift in public sentiment was noticeable. Comments that once called for the officer's termination were now cautiously hopeful. At City Hall, the mayor's communications team seized the moment. They released a statement praising the department's transparent response and proactive reform, crediting Naomi for leading by example. Back at the precinct, officers who had initially grumbled about the training now approached Naomi with questions about joining the next session voluntarily. The ripple effect was starting. Naomi, however, wasn't celebrating yet. She knew public opinion was fickle. "One good photo doesn't erase years of mistrust," she told Captain Morales. "We have to keep showing up, day after day." That afternoon, Naomi received an unexpected email from a retired officer she'd trained years ago. It read, "Saw what you did. Reminds me why I wore the badge. Keep going." She sat back in her chair, letting the words sink in. The fight against bias and for true community policing was far from over, but moments like this were fuel to keep pushing forward. And as she prepared for the next community engagement, Naomi realized something. This wasn't just about saving two officers' careers. It was about proving that even in a city divided by mistrust, change was still possible. 2 weeks after the community center visit, Kent and Daniels requested a private meeting with Naomi. She agreed, curious about what they had to say. They entered her office looking different, not in uniform, but in demeanor. Kent spoke first. "Deputy Chief, we want to keep going, not because we have to, because we should." Daniels nodded. "We've been talking with other officers, sharing what we learned. Some of them, they didn't believe us at first, but we think if they hear it from us, it might stick." Naomi studied them for a moment. "You're suggesting you lead parts of the training yourselves?" "Yes," Kent said. "We were the ones in that video. We made the mistake. If we can admit it publicly, maybe others will think twice before they repeat it." A slow smile spread across Naomi's face. "That's exactly how leadership starts, by owning your failures as much as your successes." Within a week, the department's training program had a new segment, Lessons from the Field, led by Kent and Daniels. They walked fellow officers through the coffee shop incident, unflinchingly sharing how they felt in the moment and how they saw it differently after. The impact was immediate. Officers who had resisted the training now stayed after sessions to ask questions. Some admitted their own close calls with bias, moments they wished they could redo. Watching from the back of the room, Naomi felt a quiet pride. The transformation she'd hoped for was taking root, not through orders, but through example. And it wasn't just Kent and Daniels changing. The department's culture was shifting, one honest conversation at a time. 3 months after the coffee shop incident, the Chicago Police Department unveiled its new Respect in Action program, a mandatory initiative for all officers, built on the training Naomi had championed. At the launch event, Naomi stood at the podium, looking out at a room filled with uniformed officers, city officials, and community leaders. Kent and Daniels sat in the front row, their posture proud but humble. "This program," Naomi began, "isn't about perfection. It's about awareness, humility, and accountability. We can't undo every mistake of the past, but we can make sure we don't repeat them." She spoke about the coffee shop, not to shame the officers involved, but to show that change was possible when people were willing to listen and learn. She talked about the community center visit, the conversations that broke down walls, and the courage it took for 2 officers to face their mistakes head-on. The mayor took the stage next, praising Naomi's leadership. "What started as a moment of tension," she said, "has become a turning point for our city. This is what reform looks like, not just policy, but people choosing to do better." After the event, an elderly woman from the community approached Naomi. "Deputy Chief," she said, taking Naomi's hands in hers, "you didn't just change those officers, you changed how we see the badge." Naomi felt the weight of the words. This wasn't just about one viral video anymore. It was about setting a standard for every officer who would wear the uniform after today. As she looked around the room, at the officers, the citizens, and the city leaders, she knew this was only the beginning. Respect wasn't a slogan anymore. It was policy, it was practice, and it was personal.